Welcome back to the First McCowan podcast of the week. Paul Jones in for Bob. And Steve Simmons from Post Media joins us, I think, for a potpourri. How's that for my word of the day? A potpourri of sports, Steve, because I don't think we can pick just one thing. I mean, the baseball playoffs, I was critical of the baseball playoffs on Friday. I'm not critical of them anymore. The National Football League season always impresses, particularly this time of year, and there's always great storylines. There's always great storylines when it comes to the Maple Leafs as well. So and then I want to talk to you about the Argonauts too, because the Argonauts are the most successful team in Toronto, and yet nobody goes to see them. And I want to know if you were the chief marketing officer of the Argos of MLSE, how could you market this team to get more than 15,000 people to the game?
I think the first thing I would do is open up the upper stands. And I would open them up to kids under a certain age and families. So like a parent and a child could go to a sporting event for this amount of money and I'd have the refreshments at lower prices. I'd have the tickets at lower prices, and I would get out to the areas of the city that we don't see at Argo football games, which is, let's go to Brampton. Let's go to other areas. Let's go to Markham. Let's market. There's a huge Chinese population here. There's a huge East Indian population in Toronto. There's so many ethnic people in the city. Take a ride on the subway any day of the week.
By the way, this is one of the most diverse cities in the world. It's more diverse than New York City, more diverse than Los Angeles.
The Argo crowd is almost exclusively old and white. And that has to change.
Steve, I wonder how much of that, and this is something that has been discussed ad nauseum, is, and I say this all the time when I'm around John. The three of us are of the same vintage, and I tell people that I remember my dad taking me down to Prohibition Stadium where he couldn't get a beer.
You could see them, but you couldn't get one.
Yeah, on a Tuesday night in June. And there would be 40,000 people to watch the Argos against the Rough Riders with Tom Clements and Condridge Holloway. And it was it. And then somewhere in there, we lost some generations of fans. We did not get to them. And you're climbing uphill right now. I mean, I've been to 3 games this year.
Did you have fun?
It's terrific fun.
And sorry to interrupt for one second. This might be the best Argo team I've ever seen.
Well, I'm going to say this. In terms of expectations, if they don't win the Grey Cup this year and you're an Argo fan, you're going to be really, really disappointed.
But here's the problem. If they do win the Grey Cup, will anyone notice?
No. And I was at the celebration last year in Maple Leaf Square. They didn't do a parade. They didn't do something at City Hall. They did it at Maple Leaf Square because they realized they were only going to get about 500 people. The problem now is so old and maybe so boring, but it is so old. I think it began in 1983 when the Blue Jays started to succeed. And the Argos won the Grey Cup for the first time in 30-some years.
Since 52. First time since 52,
in 1983. And suddenly there was a winning team. And then there was this baseball team playing the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Oakland A's, and all these exciting things were happening. And baseball just absolutely obliterated Canadian football in this city to the point where people will not pay to go to games. And if you sat around with a bunch of parents of, say, 12-year-old kids, what do you want to do? You want reasonable prices. Mm-hmm. You want accessibility for parking. You want a stadium you can get to. You want an enjoyable experience. You want concessions that don't send you back $1 million. Well, the Argos offer all of that. They just don't. Nobody knows it, and so they don't sell it for some reason to what Toronto of 1983 is not Toronto of 2023. This city's changed dramatically, and there's an entire population of people who don't know the Argos exist. Have never been and never seen the experience. And Paul said he's been to 3 games this year. Well, I've been a season ticket holder every year until this one, since they moved to BMO. And this is the most enjoyable team I've seen, and it's a great stadium to watch a football game in. So there's lots of things that are positive.
Oh yeah. Hey Steve, my question is, they have a dynamic guy like Pinball Clemens. Why is why wouldn't MLSE turn some of that over to Pinball and say, "Hey man, you run with it"? Like, don't you think that with his personality and his magnetism, that if you gave it to him and said, I mean, some constraints, said, "Go ahead, go to town," don't you think he would be one that could, well, change it a bit, change the
Yes,
landscape?
but with an asterisk there, because if you go, say, to a game today, and you go to buy, I'm a Diet Coke drinker. You go to buy a bottle of Diet Coke that sells for $2 or $2.50 in a convenience store, and you pay $6 at BMO Field for it. Well, as a parent who's strapped financially, these days groceries are more expensive. Salaries are coming down. Taxes are going up. Like, parents are getting squeezed every way you can look, and so you only have so many dollars to spend. This is a dollar that is affordable to most people, and yet we don't know, or the Argos don't know, or they haven't tried how to get to most people, how to get to the majority of this city, which isn't 65-year-old white people.
Hey, I resent that.
I do too, to be honest, and I remember being 65. It was a great year, but you understand what I'm saying is.
Oh, sure.
We have to.
Yeah.
I had a section behind the Argo benches where we sat. I can't tell how many canes I saw. People going to their seats, walking with canes. That's how old the Argo fan is.
And again, I've asked you to become the chief marketing officer. But is there going to be a time where the inevitability is going to be that this team just will not work here? I mean, I looked at attendance this morning of the top 10 cities in Major League Soccer, and TFC is still in the top 10, and they're brutal. They're a bad team.
Well, they have a built-in fan base of young people who go and have fun at those games, and they have become, sort of part of this show. And it tells you what MLSE did with TFC was completely accidental. It happened almost by osmosis. Young people who live in Liberty Village or thereabouts all started going to Toronto FC games, and it became a thing. Toronto's all about place to be.
Yes.
If you're not at the place to be, then you're in the wrong place, and the Argos are not the place to be. And I don't know how you get them to become that, because they win championships somewhat regularly in a city that doesn't win anything. And so the record and the event and the football and the quality of the game is not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is people don't even know who they are.
Well, who are they? Tell me who's. I mean, I know Chad Kelly's at the top of the list. He's the quarterback, but who else? Who else has made a difference for this team on the field?
Oh, they have some fantastic players on defense. This is where I really love this team. From Jamal Peters in the secondary to McManus at linebacker to Oakman on the defensive line, and he's just one of like 4 or 5 of them that are like that. Paul talks about going to Argo games back in the day when you knew every single player. Well,
yes,
these are guys who everyone should know every single name of, and you should know, Ouellette, the running back, who just hit the 1,000 yards, and and
actually he's a character, isn't he?
He's like the Ultimate Warrior from wrestling.
Yeah.
Like he's got his face painted and he's got his hair long, and he just smashes. He doesn't seem to have any finesse at all. Just smashes into the line, and there's lots of reasons to like this. But if that, here's the thing, and I'm going to criticize my own business now. The newspaper business used to be the place where you found out what was going on in your city in sports.
Mm-hmm.
The Toronto Sun doesn't cover the Argos anymore. The Toronto Star doesn't cover the Argos on a full-time basis anymore. The Globe never really did, but they do less than ever before. So the newspapers are not doing it. There's 2 sports networks. What the 2 sports networks tend to do is cover the things that they put on the air.
Sure.
One network is baseball, 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 and the other network is football, hockey, and so, you know, CFL sometimes gets trampled in guys. You know, John, you've been in the TV business long enough to understand guys protecting their products and their rights holders' products, and so there isn't someone out there fighting to, we need more CFL on television, or not games, because they have all the games televised, more coverage on a daily basis. And, you know, especially, you know, I grew up reading the first thing I did every morning when I'm having my breakfast is I had the newspaper beside me and I read the sports section.
Yeah.
Now, if you read it today, it's great. You know, you can still get my column, by the way, and I hope you still read it. But
Garriock tells me it's the second best Sunday column.
Yes, Garrick's math, by the way, is a little off. But I think he needs to get his calculator out. But what I'm saying is, if there's no coverage on a daily basis in any paper, and there's not much on television, and there's not, you know, where are kids getting their information? On their phones? You know, what
and by the way, it's not very much.